How can you miss visiting that town? And that brings us to the end of today's show. If you don't keep to date, you can follow us on our social media platforms at CGTN. And I'm still in Beijing. Thanks for watching. Goodbye for now.
This is CGTN, China Global Television Network.
A political disagreement has sprung up between Turkey and the Netherlands, and so far there is no sign of compromise. In the latest developments, Turkey banned the Dutch ambassador from its soil, and a spokesman said Turkey may now re-evaluate the deal that stopped the flow of refugees to Greece. So where is this diplomatic row headed? Turkish politicians sought to campaign among Turks in the Netherlands, but the EU fears despotism in Turkey if the referendum is successful. What is President Erdogan's goal in this referendum? And in legal and political terms, what is likely to happen in the vote and afterwards? The Netherlands held an election on March 15th. Early results indicate that the Dutch Prime Minister Mark Rutte's party has won the most seats in Parliament.
The Netherlands, after Brexit, after the US election, said enough to the wrong kind of populism.
Turkey has been trying to get into the EU for years. How will these incidents affect Turkey's potential inclusion? Will President Erdogan give up on the idea of gaining EU membership after all this time with no progress? How will the relationship between Turkey and NATO develop in the future?
Turkey and the Netherlands are at odds after Dutch authorities cancelled the Turkish foreign minister's permission to come to Rotterdam to speak at a rally in support of Turkey's President Erdogan. Protests by Turkish-Dutch dual nationals in the city were broken up by riot police, and the diplomatic row continues. Turkey accuses the Netherlands of Nazi tactics, while the Dutch respond that Turkey's political actions were inappropriate and their words insulting. And in the latest developments, Turkey will ban the Dutch ambassador from its soil, and a spokesman said Turkey may now re-evaluate the deal that stopped the flow of refugees to Greece. To discuss the facts of the disagreement and the issues that have brought it about, I'm happy to be joined in the studio by Hua Liming, former Chinese ambassador to Iran.
The issue is Turkish domestic crisis rather than a diplomatic row between Turkey and the Netherlands. So I believe Turkey and Erdogan will remain the headlines of the coming weeks and the coming months, and the Netherlands will not.
How long will the crisis last? We are also joined here by Hamza Jahanzab, British Chamber One Belt One Road Forum Chair.
I also agree that this issue we have is something which will spark debate. However, I think it's only for the short run.
We shall also speak via satellite to Professor Yildirim Koch, Vice President, Patriotic Party, Middle East Technical University. That's our topic. This is Dialogue. I'm Yang Rui. Welcome to Dialogue, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Turkey and the Netherlands have long been very good friends, but all of a sudden this broke out. What's the driving force behind the mounting tensions, Ambassador Hua?
I think the main problem is that the Turkish election referendum that now is going to 1 month later. I think this referendum will decide Turkey will change the system, because for 100 years Turkey has been a democratic system and a secular system in the Middle East, and the parliamentary will have the final say. And now the Erdogan, after 10 years to be the prime minister, the president, he's going to amend the constitution of Turkey. Instead of a parliamentary system, is going to set another kind of system which president will have the final say. And he is going to continue his presidency for another 2 cycles. And he's expected to be the president of Turkey until 2029. If the referendum, he win the referendum in 1 month later.
For years, the European Union disagrees seriously with President Erdogan politically, and they accused him of trying to achieve sweeping presidential powers. This time around, troubles broke out in the Netherlands, one of the most reasonable European countries in the old part of the continent. Let me cross over to Idrim Koch for his comments on the political background against which the current row broke out between the 2 countries. Domestically speaking, Professor Couch, what can you tell us?
Actually, we can approach the problem from 2 perspectives. Developments in the short run, especially the political developments in Turkey and in the Netherlands, and in the long run, the political course of Turkey, which Turkey has pursued since 1945, the end of the Second World War. Now, when a government has domestic problems, the general tendency is to create an external enemy to unite the domestic forces. Now, in the Netherlands, general elections are being held, and in Turkey, as our friends rightly observed, we have on the 16th of April a referendum which will be of great importance, and the government cannot rule the country. They have serious internal economic problems, and to overcome these economic problems they have to escalate international problems. So in the short run, the problems with Germany and with the Netherlands, the government hopes will help them in the referendum. But I think clearer and a more important problem concerns Turkey's rupture, Turkey's getting away from the NATO system. Turkey changed its foreign policy in 1945 and became closer to the United States and became a member of the NATO in 1952. However, during the recent years, that's perhaps the last 3 or 4 years, problems with NATO and the United States have increased considerably. And the main problems in Turkey, that is the problems with the espionage organization led by Fethullah Gülen and the PKK, the Kurdish separatist movement, are all stemming from the policies of the United States and of the other Western powers. It's not only the United States, but at the same time Germany and the Netherlands who support the PKK separatist organization and the Fethullah Gülen's espionage organization under the control of the NATO. So I think the escalation of the problems between Turkey and the Netherlands and Germany are, on the one hand, the result of domestic short-term problems, but in the long term, it is the part of a general strategy to weaken Turkey. And unfortunately, the political party in power is not able to cope with these problems and thus tends to escalate international problems to soothe down and control the opposition in Turkey.
Professor Couch, do you believe most of the European Turks refuse to be integrated into the mainstream society, hence
problems for the the people from Turkey and who still continue to preserve their national characteristics. So the relations between Turkey and the European Union seem to deteriorate. It will be worse in the future, and the European Union has never had the intention of permitting the accession of Turkey to the EU.
Yes, a lot of the overseas observers who follow the development in continental Europe think this will fuel the crisis and would add to the dynamics of the rise of far-right movement in the European Union. Thank you very much. This is an election year.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for being with us. This is an election year, so my question for you is, do you think this is also a threat to the xenophobic sentiments among the whites in the European countries will be a threat to people like you British Pakistani nationals?
I think, I mean, after last year's Brexit vote that we had in the United Kingdom, I think it's very sort of, you know, targeted. And I think what was really interesting with regards to xenophobia is that we saw a rise in hate crime. We saw people, you know, in this kind of horrible, nasty campaign which allowed, you know, a division. It was very divisive, but it also allowed people to make it feel as though it was okay. Now, I mean, in this campaign, like we said, we have an election now, but we've also had election in the past. I do believe that there is a slight change with the way politics is shifting, and that's not a nice thing. It's not a good thing, in my opinion, to see this rise of far-right movement, because with the Brexit campaign, we saw an MP murdered, we saw a rise in hate crimes, and, you know, people from different countries need to feel like they belong in their home country.
Ambassador Hua, do you share the same note of pessimism regarding the future of millions of European Turks in Europe? And do you think this is a failure of multiculturalism?
Yes, I have the experience because my last post was in The Hague. I was Chinese ambassador to the Netherlands. 400,000 Turkish community are living in this country for 3 generations already. But unfortunately, this community can hardly integrate it into the Dutch society. This is what the Dutch people are concerned about that. They have their own culture, they are living separatedly, they have their own mosques. So Dutch people are the concerns about their own society and about the Muslim, Islamic immigrants from the other parts, especially Turkish and Moroccan in the Dutch society. So this is the problem. I think this is not only problem of the Netherlands. I think that the problem of majority of the European countries they have to face, especially after Syrian war. Millions of refugees now pouring into the European countries. Now they have to. The European governments have to deal with all these problems.
Do you share the view that far-right movement is gaining momentum, and European politicians have already been beset by the issue of asylum seekers since about 2 years ago. Now, the European Turks have aroused further ultra-nationalist sentiments of the whites in particular. So what do you think of the danger of having more of the populism there?
I think, like I mentioned, with the Brexit campaign, we saw a very nasty campaign. And before, I think people maybe felt some sort of threat to a certain community. I can give my example. I was born in Britain, however, my grandfather moved from Pakistan to England. Now, one thing which was very key to my sort of upbringing was to give back to your society, is to play an integral part in your society, to give back to your society. And now I was brought up with that belief, because when your parents and grandfather, or your great-grandparents, whichever generation you may be from, when you move from one place to another, it's slightly harder, in my opinion, to make a point that you belong and that you want to play an integral part. For me, it was joining the Member of Youth Parliament for the UK Parliament. In 2012, I sat on the Youth Select Committee. I was very much motivated by my experiences as somebody who has dual heritage. Now, with regards to right-wing populism, I think many people are afraid, but I feel as though there has to be more done from both sides. It cannot be just that, oh, the immigrants need to immerse themselves. I think it's also the other way around. With regards to Britain in particular, Britain itself has a history with colonialism, and the reason why many people from different countries have moved to England is because of the British Empire and similar sort of empires. Now, with regards to integration, I feel as though when I was growing up, I remember being sort of part of the mosque community. We had a welcome to my mosque day. We created dialogue and a kind of engagement, and I think that's key for the future, so that we can further understand one another, as opposed to building walls like we're seeing in the United States.
In fact, India and Pakistan have both fallen victim to the British colonialism. If you look at the issue of Kashmir and the land of control.
Absolutely, the longest history.
It's policy of divide and rule by the British colonialists. You are watching Dialogue with Ambassador Hua Liming, former Chinese ambassador to the Netherlands, Mr. Hamza Jahanzeb, a British Chamber Belt and Road Forum chair. We also speak to Professor Koç from a university in Turkey to make comments about the latest spat between the Netherlands and Turkey. We'll be back in a short while. Please stay with us.
CGTN shows you more, providing a fresh global voice you can trust.
And a different look at the world you won't find anywhere else.
We offer unparalleled coverage of Asia, Africa and Latin America.
We present diverse perspectives on news and newsmakers from around the world.
We want to engage our viewers with stories that represent the complete picture.
We want to share with you ideas that matter to us all.
The stories, the people, the issues.
A new and balanced perspective.
CGTN. See the difference.
Let's look at the relationship between European Union and Turkey. Do you think President Erdogan will stop the implementation of the Istanbul process regarding the future of asylum seekers who are still coming to Europe, European shore in their thousands each year? How serious will that threat be?
I think the Syrian refugee problem is a problem not only for Europe itself. For Turkey, it's a big problem. I think Turkey has the chance to move millions of its refugees from Turkey to Europe. Of course, in Erdogan's view, I think these refugee problem may be used as a leverage to bargain with the European Union to get some advantages from the European Union. For instance, the free visa for Turkish and other Turkish membership in EU. And all these has become a leverage of Turkey. So I think the talk will continue because in the interest of Turkey itself and the European Union, Turkey is the only country they can talk with about the Syrian refugee problem. So I think the talk will continue. And Turkish membership in EU, I think, will be suspended for many years, because for 50 years Turkish has asked for the membership of EU and nothing happened. And after this kind of issue, I think Turkey will all totally disappointed about this future of the EU membership.
Right, Ankara must have been left disillusioned, and increasingly so. As Turkey and more EU member states are increasingly at odds, do you believe the future is over for Turkey to join the European Union?
I would say not necessarily. In my opinion, I feel as though the Netherlands is a very small country. In fact, if you think of it as the same size of, a village in Chongqing, for example, it's very small. Now, I think just because of Netherlands, I don't think that Turkey should be totally ruled out or will be ruled out. I think, with the
Maybe we should not only focus on the relationship between the Netherlands and Turkey. Look at Germany, where some Turkey politicians are allowed to participate in the rallies in support of President Erdogan's constitutional referendum. Why do we see discrepancies between Germany and the Netherlands in terms of their policy?
I feel as though, although both countries are united by the European Union, they are sort of allowed to make their own decisions with regards to which politicians should be, or want to be as well. I think it's a personal decision because, again, what's really important with regards to the referendum is that it is from President Erdogan in order for him to change, the sort of, the future.
Do you think the flexibility of the German policy option has somehow created a silver lining for seeking a solution to the refugee issue, because the European Union cannot afford to have a closed border, they cannot afford to have an open border allowing refugees in the thousands to flee to European countries?
In my opinion, I think the crisis of the refugees is a very important one. We need to look at why people are fleeing their countries. It's because of war. It's not because they want a holiday pass to another country. It's because they're facing a truly terrible time, and their state, their political state in their country is very bad. Now, with regards to Germany, I understand that they had a very open door policy. However, we must not, immediately criticize somebody their country for opening up their borders, because I feel as though a country the size of Germany, it's quite large with regards to, the European continent in its entirety. I think.
Ambassador Hua, do you think Chancellor Angela Merkel is currently in deep political crisis? So does her CDU, the ruling party, and therefore she's become more flexible in somehow keeping the door open for negotiations between Ankara and Berlin, seeking a solution to the refugee crisis, so that she would hopefully get elected again.
Chancellor Merkel has been flexible from the very beginning. I think he has different policy with other European countries, and he's very lenient to the Syrian refugees. So that's what she has been criticized by many German voters and many European unions. But to my opinion, the Europe as a whole, from the very beginning, they were not ready to accept Turkey as a member of the European Union because of the cultural difference between Turkey and the Europe. So I think it's not a problem that 50 years the negotiations. I think just the European as a whole, they cannot accept Turkey as a member of the European Union.
President Putin has obviously improved the relationship with Ankara following the coup event of last year. And therefore, what do you think of the possibility of Turkey being accepted by the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, given the fact that Turkey is going east after being left disillusioned by the dark prospects of being accepted by the European Union, Ambassador Hua?
The Europeans now suspected of President Erdogan's policy. First of all, President Erdogan's domestic policy to be the strongman of Turkey, to change the political pattern of Turkey, which has been continued for 100 years. The secondly is the Islamism. Now is going to be replace the Turkish culture.
Excuse me, do you think the suspicions that President Erdogan is gaining or becoming more popular with Islamic fundamentalists, and that will be a serious threat to the stability in the European Union?
I think, I'm not sure exactly with regards to how they would be favorable with the Islamic State. I think, in fact, they would want to try and make sure that they are free from any kind of terrorism which proves a threat. And because Turkey is so close to Syria, it has seen many people join the Islamic State. For example, from the United Kingdom, we had 3 girls who went to the Islamic State. I don't believe that Turkey is wanting to collaborate or wants to be part of it, but I feel as though because of its close proximity to Syria, there is a higher chance of terrorism.
Ambassador Hua, is it true that President Erdogan has tried for a long time to rewrite the constitution that was set first by the founding father of modern Turkey to let the country become more secular, and given the devastating failure of the coup of last year, he was able to dismiss all of the political dissidents who disagree with his effort to rewrite the constitution, which aims to lay groundwork for him to become the most powerful leader in the country. And that will be a devastating blow to those secular forces in the world. You've been talking about the Islamic movement.
Yes, I believe from the very beginning, President Erdogan, he has the ambition to be the strongman of Turkey, and to change the Turkish traditional constitution, which has continued for 100 years by Kemal Atatürk in Turkey for 100 years. Now he's going to change the parliamentary system of Turkey, to change it to president. President will be the only one strong man in Turkey, and he will almost have the final say of Turkish domestic and foreign affairs. And I believe he will continue his cycle of presidency for two cycles, and he will continue to 2029. And that's his program, and that's his ambition.
But the image and the legacy of a founding father of a modern Turkey, Mr. Kemal, General Kemal, has been so popular and so respectable in Turkey. Do you think that President Erdogan's enormous campaign to rewrite the constitution will somehow do damage to the legacy of Mr. Kemal?
I think with regards to General Kemal, I feel as though Erdogan wants to create his own image, like you mentioned, and I don't think it could possibly sort of allow people to view him in that way, that strongman, that image that we've been talking about. I think
does he like or dislike the image of being a strongman? I
think he likes the image, and that's why I think, like His Excellency said, I feel as though he will go on to rule until 2029, and I think I'm not quite sure what will happen in the future, but as long as the people in Turkey get to have their say, I think that's really, really important and really fundamental to their
Ambassador, how serious
right.
is the domestic situation in Turkey? Do you think the current constitutional referendum would breed more dissent and opposition from the parliament and from the society at large?
That's why President Erdogan is so worried about the incidents that happened in Netherlands, in Germany, in Denmark, and in Sweden, because he's not sure, actually, what the result of the referendum will be after 1 month. So he is trying his best to mobilize the Turkish public opinion to support his program and to win the referendum after 1 month. But he's not sure about the result. If he wins, and I think that the constitution will successfully change, rewrite it, but if loses, then will be political crisis in Turkey.
What do you think of any possible impact on the bilateral relationship as a result of this kind of rallies and political event, turbulence between European Union on China? I mean, what do you think of the impact upon the bilateral relationship between Beijing and Ankara as a result of the rallies that caused so much tensions between European Union and Ankara?
Relations between Turkey, Ankara, and the European Union will be very much affected, but just for the short time. If we look at the Russian and Turkey relationship, once was very deteriorated after the fighter was shut down by Turkey. But after 1 year, 2 years, they.
But what about China?
Closer. But the China-Turkish relationship will not be very much affected by this issue. I think China is too remote to be involved in this issue.
But perhaps it's a good opportunity and a good idea for China to give a warm suggestion as to whether Turkey should be recruited by the Shanghai Cooperation Organization to strengthen the idea of a Belt and Road Initiative. I'll see you next time. Until then, goodbye.
This is CGTN, China Global Television Network.
You're watching The World Today from CGTN. I'm Jeff Moody in Beijing. As we go on air, news just in.